When a 15-year-old girl named Cher arrived home after midnight, her parents were already in bed. She decided to leave the back door unlocked for her older brother, who was sleeping over at a friend's house. Big mistake. In the middle of the night, the girl awoke to feel something cold and metallic pressing against her neck. At first, she thought it was her brother playing a prank on her. She couldn't see in the pitch-black bedroom. Then a big hairy hand covered her nose and mouth. She couldn't breathe. She heard a deep, rasping voice say,
"If you make any noise, I'll kill you."
As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she could make out a shape of a man leaning over her. There was no face, just a black mask with holes cut out for the eyes. He was holding a knife to her throat. Knowing her parents were asleep in the next room, the girl tried to make as much noise as she could, but the man's hand muffled her screams. She kicked her legs and tried to bang against the wall so her parents would hear her. Suddenly, some strange noises woke them up. They decided to check on their daughter, thinking she was having a bad dream. When the girl's parents opened her bedroom door, they were confronted by a terrifying scene. All they could see in the darkened room was a big black silhouette bent over their daughter, holding a knife to her throat. As soon as they saw the knife, her father jumped on top of the intruder and struggled with him. Her mother grabbed the man's wrists and wrestled the knife out of his hand. Her father managed to get his arm around the masked man's neck and began choking him. The girl grabbed her cell phone off the nightstand and ran outside to call 911. Her parents kept the intruder pinned to the bedroom floor until police arrived 4 minutes later. The bedroom door burst open and a police officer ran in holding a gun and yelling,
"Don't move, or I'll blow your head off."
The police officer handcuffed the intruder and dragged him out of the house. When police searched the man's truck, they found a variety of weapons and some bloody clothes. It turned out that the masked man had already murdered 2 people a few days before. The family had no way of knowing it, but they had just captured a serial killer. The scariest thing about this story is it's true. The girl's name is Shay McDonough. The killer's name is Adam Leroy Lane. He'll be spending the next 25 to 30 years in prison. So the moral of this story is, always make sure your back door is locked. You don't want to be a victim of the backdoor man.
A month ago, my girlfriend and I got engaged. We moved into a new apartment and began living our lives together. It was the first time either of us had shared an apartment, so it was a new experience for both of us. We were deeply in love. I knew she was the one, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her, and I thought she felt the same way about me. Everything went well until about 2 weeks ago, when I noticed my girlfriend was acting strangely. She became very attached to me, and I felt like she couldn't stand being away from me for a moment. One evening, she said to me, "Darling, when you are not home, I still feel you near me." I didn't attach much importance to these words. I thought she was just being affectionate. However, a few days later she told me something else. "Whenever you're at work," she said, "I often hear your voice, as if you're calling my name." This began to happen more and more as a few days went by, and I started getting a little worried about her. One day, when I arrived home from work, I found her sitting silently at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall with a glazed look in her eyes. I grabbed a chair, sat down beside her, and asked her what was the matter. "I think there's something wrong with me," she murmured. "Why do you think that?" I asked. I saw you today, she said. You walked from the kitchen to the bedroom, and then you were staring out the window. But I was at work all day, I said. I know, she replied with a sigh. That's when I really began to get worried. I suspected my girlfriend was losing her mind and started to have hallucinations. Over the next few days, she kept telling me that she saw me in the apartment when I was at work. She could even describe exactly what I was wearing. My girlfriend was also acting more and more strange. She was getting more and more quiet, and she was terrified of being alone. Sometimes, she would just sit there, silently staring at me. Last night, my girlfriend was very tired and decided to go to bed early. I held her hand and sat on the edge of the bed while she was falling asleep. Just before she nodded off, she said, "You're not here." "Honey, I'm right here," I replied. "Don't worry, everything's fine." "No, you're not here," she said. "You're in the kitchen." Just then, I heard a dull noise coming from the kitchen. It sounded like a chair scraping across the linoleum. Then I heard the sound of footsteps walking down the hallway. Fear gripped my heart. I didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, the handle of the bedroom door began to turn, and the door opened slowly. Maybe it's just a draft, I thought as my eyes grew wide with fear. But it wasn't a draft. The door swung open, and I saw a man standing there in the doorway. It was me. It's difficult to describe exactly what I saw. It was me, but at the same time, it wasn't me. It was as if I was staring at myself in a mirror, but the other me had cold, lifeless eyes. The other me looked at me for a moment, then turned and left, shutting the door behind him. It took me a moment to recover from the shock, and then I sprang up off the bed and ran after him. The hallway was empty. I checked the kitchen, then the bathroom, and he was nowhere to be found. The other me simply vanished. It was terrifying. And then, as I stood in the hallway, trying to figure out what had happened, trying to calm myself down, and convince myself that it was just a hallucination, I heard a faint voice coming from the kitchen. It wasn't my voice. It was the voice of my girlfriend. "We're here to stay," she said. "Forever." I then realized that my girlfriend wasn't in the kitchen. She was lying in the bedroom, exactly where I had left her seconds before. I was so frightened, I started trembling like a leaf. I ran back into the bedroom, grabbed my girlfriend and dragged her with me out the front door. We left the apartment that very moment and spent the night at my parents' house. Tomorrow we will go back to pack things up. I still can't understand what happened in that apartment, but neither of us can bear to spend another night there. Hopefully when we pack things up, all will be well and no one will be there.
The Small Room. When I was 14, I began spending the night at my cousin Jason's house a lot more often. My own dad was a bit of a jerk, and I really enjoyed having any chance to get away from him when I could. My cousin was my age, and although his mom didn't have a house that was any nicer than ours, it was worth visiting to be around better people. My aunt had one of those, I'm not sure what you'd call them, single wide trailers, I guess. It was kept in rather nice shape. She had it placed off an old country road, and it was pretty creepy in that area to begin with. But on the night I experienced this weird event, it was even creepier because I was spending the week there, and on that particular night, my aunt and uncle were not going to be home. My cousin and I stayed up late watching some horror movies. This was the late 1980s, so we were watching the latest Freddy Krueger movie. I can't say I remember which one, although I think it was the Dream Warriors one. You know, the one that takes place in an asylum. We were up pretty late, or at least pretty late in comparison to how late we usually stayed up. Jason eventually began falling asleep, so I woke him up and told him that he should go to bed. He sleepily got up and went into his bedroom. After the movie was over, I turned the TV off and cuddled up on the couch. I fell asleep almost immediately. I woke up in the dark. I went to look at the clock to see what time it was, and when I did, I saw Jason standing in the hallway, just staring right at me. It was unsettling. He was just standing there, staring. "What's wrong?" I asked him, more than a little worried. He began. "Could you do me a favor?" "I guess," I replied. More than anything, I just wanted to go back to sleep. "Can you come and sleep in my room?" Jason asked. "I really don't want to be alone right now." I didn't want to go sleep in his room. Remember, this was a single-wide trailer, and Jason had a room that passed for nothing more than a walk-in closet. He had a twin-size bed that pretty much took up the entire room. There was a little bit of space for the door to open, and that was it. So, in order to sleep in Jason's room, I'd have to sleep in the twin bed with him. On the other hand, he was my cousin, and he wouldn't have asked me to do this unless he was really bothered by something. So I agreed. Jason and I climbed into the bed, and in typical guy style, he scrunched himself on one side and I on the other. Even though I was not comfortable, it really wasn't any worse than sleeping on the couch. I fell asleep right away. Jason woke me up later, this time by shaking my shoulder. When I stirred, he whispered to me, "Did you hear that?" "Did I hear what?" I asked, louder than Jason would have liked. He shushed me, which only pissed me off because I hate it when people shush me. But before I could respond, I heard it. Someone was walking down the hallway. There were clear footfalls in the hallway. I looked over at Jason. "Someone must have come home," I whispered. He shook his head. "That's why I asked you to come in here," he said. "I heard the footfalls before, and I thought it might have been you." I wanted to ask him why he just didn't ask me if it was me. But then I heard an even scarier noise. Someone's fingernails or something like that, scratching up and down the door. They slowly scratched down and then up again. Slowly down and slowly up. "I heard that before too," Jason whispered. We both lay there for a while listening. After about 5 minutes, the scratching stopped. We did not hear footfalls moving away from the door. Jason did have a closet next to his bed, and there was an aluminum bat in it. I quietly pushed open the sliding door and reached in and grabbed the bat. Then, still trying to be quiet, I crept towards the door and pushed it open, only to see emptiness. I flipped on the bedroom light, jumped into the hallway with the bat, and turned on the light there. Jason got out of bed and the two of us searched the whole trailer, finding absolutely no one and no explanation for what we had heard. Since the sounds had come while we were in his room, I suggested to Jason that he sleep on the couch and that I sleep on the floor of the living room. Neither of us heard anything for the rest of the night, and neither of us have any idea what happened that night.
Hey, this is the Grimtail Brothers. Make sure you like and subscribe for more.